restaurant before this, right?
Melanie owned the food carts starting in 2010.
Is that where you met her?
No, I met her on Match.com.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, ordered her on the internet.
And you are a type 1 diabetic, correct?
I am now. I was not always. So I was diagnosed in 2012.
How old were you?
I was 33 years old.
33.
And surprisingly, half of people diagnosed with type 1 are actually at 30 years or older. So
Really?
that's part of why the name has changed from juvenile diabetes.
Yep.
I'm not really happy with giving it a number instead because it doesn't make much more sense to people. But
I wish they would call it something different.
yeah, like pancreatic insufficiency, but that's complicated, or
Right.
just, I don't know, you gotta think of something.
Because I always try to make sure to say type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
Because it's such a different
Yeah.
animal.
It is same challenges in many regards, and the same treatment as far as approach, at least dietary and management. But yeah, it's. I mean, I don't personally ever take any offense. I think anybody struggling with blood sugar is, facing a demon that they just gotta face. It's no easier nor harder. Like I have to do the whole insulin game for myself, but I don't have insulin resistance. Which, if you're trying to reverse your type 2 diabetes, then you have kind of a harder go at that. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that what started this cafe?
Indirectly, yes. So, I mean, Melanie is probably working towards restaurant ownership for a while now, but the pivot as far as the menu concept started 2 years ago when we met. So, cooked her a nice meal on our first date and kind of introduced her to low carb, and I was just brave enough not to realize I was cooking for a chef on my first date. So I was trying to avoid the awkward restaurant moments of being a finicky orderer and leaving that impression with my first date with this beautiful woman. So
Yeah.
I was like, how about I cook? And that seemed easier for me, and I made some nice,
Yeah, what did you make?
red pepper stuffed with cauliflower rice and sausage with, I think there was like tarragon in there, and then scallops that she jokes were seared in like a quarter or like half an inch of olive oil, and then a few the double chocolate muffins or blender muffins. I think that was.
Was that her first experience with?
I'm pretty sure first overt experience that she was aware of. So she had actually been kind of at an interesting health junction herself, where she was getting self-conscious about a little bit of weight gain herself, and I didn't, I thought she was beautiful when I met her.
Right.
But she was trying to low-cal herself and ended up putting on, more weight as a
Right.
result of increased appetite.
Even though she was an athlete, though.
She was a runner at the time where we met, and she still is. It's just that she would run to try to control the weight, but then be hungry, and between kind of the wrap skier or like one of our best Madison items that she created was the sweet Thai chili wrap, which everybody loved, and it was probably one of the key items at the food cart for the last 5, 6, 7 years. And we kind of pulled that away from people because it had at least 40 grams of sugar between the Thai chili sauce and everywhere else in there. It's, the crispy wontons, the bad oils and stuff like that. Most restaurant owners and chefs aren't aware of that issue, so
Right.
I guess I take some credit for sharing that with her.
Yeah. What kind of oils do you use here?
We use avocado.
Avocado?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a pricey oil.
It is, yeah. We use a few others with the, for cold use where we,
Right. Yep.
where we can, but, just following as much of the rules
That's
as we can.
awesome.
and
That's
doing the
really,
best we can, yeah.
that's very rare find. Because you'll
Yeah.
find low carb options, but it's still usually vegetable oils.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing on the menu?
The jalapeno poppers, I'd
Oh,
have to be honest. Yeah.
I'm glad I ordered those.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really say you're feeling deprived from any sort of diet, which is
No.
a huge criticism of type 1 management with low carb,
Yep.
when you're eating things like bacon wrapped jalapeno poppers. And
Okay, well, I have to say, your meatballs, I don't like anybody's meatballs but my own, but the seasoning and everything is very, on par. Is Melanie, the chef?
Yeah, she's the chef. We have a few chefs in the back who are, have a more skilled palate than I do, so I can't
They
take
are
credit for that.
amazing, and I even had them left over the next day, and I was like, wow,
Yeah.
these don't taste dried out, they don't taste bad.
That's
They're
good.
fantastic.
Yeah, I've never waited that long to eat them because I kind of am spoiled now.
Good food, right?
With good food
That's
every
why
day,
it's called
and
the
so
Good Food Cafe.
Yeah, she started it as Good Food as the food cart, and now it's Good Food Low Carb Cafe.
Do you still have the food cart?
We have two.
Two.
Yep.
Are they downtown Madison?
Downtown Madison, one's by the Capitol, and one's on campus by State Street Library Mall area.
Oh, perfect.
And
And
those are during the week over the lunch hour. So.
Okay. But you do a Saturday brunch. Tell me about that.
Well, pancakes are back on the menu. We
awesome.
make a wonderful low carb pancake
Yep.
and all kinds of things from, and we branch out. I mean, it's a low carb restaurant, but we do have a few items that bring people, kind of halfway along the way. So we do still have a wrap option. So, you're bringing your husband along
Yeah.
and he's reluctant. He can, kind of feel more comfortable with that.
Right, right.
You're just never going to get somebody to eat a salad.
Yeah.
And then, once they see the food and be like, oh,
Yeah.
I want that anyway.
Oh, your zoodles are to die
Yeah,
for.
most people, I wouldn't even, compare them with a pasta noodle.
No.
It's better.
And they're not even watery like what I do them at home sometimes.
Yeah, we press them and kind of we've
Learn the
workarounds
trips
for
and
that.
tricks,
Yeah, that was a
right?
challenge initially to try to figure out how
Yeah.
to do that. So there's a few secrets of the trade that we employ as well as a power drill to
That's awesome.
get through 60 pounds of zucchini a day.
Yeah, I believe it. Well, you also have a catering business, so if someone wanted to have like maybe a wedding or a party catered.
Yeah, we do a lot of catering, so we do business events, corporate, state, kind of state rate items that are, that kind of appeals. We're in a university town and a government town, so.
What would the meal be, would you say?
We do a lot of taco bars, and
Taco
that's actually
bars,
something
that's
that translates
great.
very well to low carb.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when we're catering, they're not people, explicitly looking for low carb, so it's like people hosting for out-of-town guests.
Yep.
And so we meet them in the middle, but then, low carb's in our name, and there's a very, easy way to low carb a taco salad out of the ingredients we have there.
Yeah, we do a taco bar night at home a lot.
Yeah, so it's kind of become, one of our signature dishes, and we've kind of brought that into our cafe menu as well, because there's kind of a, building audience for our Taco Tuesday.
Oh, Taco Tuesday,
Yeah.
that's a great idea. Well, I see you have a lot of desserts. That caught my eye.
Yeah.
Do those rotate or?
Well, we're building those, because right now I'm the desserts chef.
I was going to ask who's the mastermind behind that.
So far it's all the things that I like to eat.
Yeah, because you
But
said you
we're
made
trying.
Melanie a dessert. the first time.
Yeah. Did the chocolate blender muffins. We do some muffins on special order catering so far, but we can expand as we continue to go. We do a variety of cheesecake.
I
bars
saw the
and-
lemon
and we
or the lime, key lime.
Our latest addition has been a low carb keto fudge, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
also dairy free.
Oh,
so then
that's great.
that appeals to the vegan audience, which
Yeah.
is nice to kind of have options for everybody. We try to fit a lot of
Yeah.
people who are working around food restrictions in.
Definitely. Tell me a little bit about your whole journey. Like, start from the beginning, because I think this is important how you were misdiagnosed at first.
Yeah, it depends on how far back into the backstory you want to go, but it all starts in childhood.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does, because
Your mom, right?
Well, my mom and my father. I was, born to the standard American family, eating standard American diet, and I mean, I'm a big growing kid my whole life. I was probably.
And you were always an athlete? Running
always
marathons?
an athlete, not marathons, but I was a soccer player, a swim kid, and kind of dabbled in everything else that kept me busy.
Yeah.
So, between that, I was definitely an aerobic athlete or an endurance athlete just by nature. But then, college came, I went to UW, and I found that there's beer here. And
We're known for that.
By the time I left UW, and I didn't really know how to cook at that time, so I've come a long way in that. I more or less taught myself just the physical act of how to cook, and then it wasn't until 5 years ago that I figured out what to cook.
Yeah.
So, or maybe somewhere along those lines, I was developing as I went. But from eating Hot Pockets and SpaghettiOs or whatever it was as a kid, and then learning how to cook once I was on my own, which was mandatory because I'm a big guy, a big eater, and it's expensive to get that at a restaurant. Eating out is a luxury, to be honest. I understand that. and because I've I've not been able to afford to eat out. So, and that's where we try to keep our price point very, very reasonable here. Because we're serving the best food we can, but we want it to be accessible to people.
Totally.
Because not everybody can cook yet. I think everybody can learn with some help.
Yeah.
You help. So then continuing on, after college, I was up to 274 pounds. I know exactly because it was scary. And I wasn't athletic anymore after that because studying and everything else I was doing wasn't exactly good for my health. And so I reinvested in that because I had already seen my father have several heart attacks and several open heart surgeries.
How old was he?
I was in 4th grade, so he must have been and my parents are a bit older, so more I was the youngest of a large family.
But still.
So that really had a profound impact on me because it was like, oh my God, I want to go to college and become a doctor and save my dad or whatever it was. But then, between the heart disease, which almost became normal. It was just like, okay, you take those pills and it kind of slipped into the back of my mind at least. It was like, well, if I ever saw Dad shoveling snow, I was sure to steal the shovel from him type of thing.
Yeah.
But then while I was in college, my mother was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And then that was like, okay, I really got to start paying attention to my health. Like I'm surrounded and I'm somebody who had been an athlete and health is important to me and I see the value in it. I just wanted to figure out how to do it. And
did the doctors tell your dad not to eat saturated fat?
Oh, it was great. Actually, one of his first heart surgeons was Bill Davis.
Really?
Yeah.
Dr. Davis, I suppose. You're from Madison originally.
Yeah, but Milwaukee suburbs originally.
Oh, yeah.
So he
Blessings.
actually put blessings, but not necessarily at the time because he put in a few stents and this was the early Bill Davis while he was still on his journey.
Yep.
And I believe that's when my dad got the Dean Ornish books and the yoga and meditation stuff that just didn't connect with him.
The fat-free.
Yeah, so that was ultra low fat, and I tried it for him for a month, and then it just kind of slipped away because it was like I remember cooking, I'm like, well, Dad needs to have some sort of dessert, and I found the dessert in the book that was like a meringue with cornflakes in it and a bunch of sugar, and there was no fat.
No fat.
So that was 12-year-old me cooking a healthy dessert, realizing it wasn't healthy.
But that's really cool that you tried to help.
Yeah, I was just way too hungry at the time. It was like painful. I really wanted to stick with it, but I had the willpower of a 12-year-old boy with a raging appetite.
Yeah.
So, it was heart disease on my dad's side, diabetes on my mom's side, and then I was overweight. Nobody really mentioned anything because I was just the normal level of overweight. I'm 6'5". So.
Husky. That's what my mom would say.
I just wore extra large shirts. And
right.
I've also noticed that extra large shirts have gotten bigger in my lifetime. So a little bit of vanity sizing there because now I often fit into mediums. But that's a good note. The ground's moved beneath us. Getting back to my story, started to invested in weight loss because I wanted to play soccer. I wanted to be healthy, and so the first soccer game I played back, I remember seeing stars.
Oh,
so
wow.
Okay, I got to work up to this.
Yeah.
So I started, running. I was like, wow, that
How
really
old were you
hurts.
then?
I was early 20s.
Okay.
And just kind of getting back into shape, and it was like, okay, I could handle a bit of the pain, but it hurt getting back in shape, and there was jiggle and bounce and sore joints. And,
I remember.
Yeah, so that was definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
So then I got into more gentle endurance sports, and yoga definitely started with that. That's actually developed more recently.
Yeah.
But then riding my bike in Madison, southwest of here, we have fantastic hilly, the driftless regions.
This whole area.
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased, but I'd say it's the best cycling in the country.
Awesome.
Without mountains, but we have far more roads and more variety. And really got into that, got into marathons, got into my swimming background came in, and suddenly I'm 10 years into a triathlon career and being competitive in that sport, and then I became a coach in that and was trying to help others with their health. And in the midst of that, it was when I was 33 and diagnosed with type 1. I had actually just finished an Ironman locally here in Madison about a month and a half prior to my diagnosis.
A whole Ironman.
Yeah, 140 miles, and I knew I wasn't feeling right that time, but I couldn't put together the symptoms because type 1 diabetes can have a much more subtle onset than you'd realize, and especially since you're not aware that as an adult that can actually happen, and it can, it does. I didn't really...
Did you think you had type 2 at first?
So even broader in the family, I do have a type 1 in my family
Okay.
who was diagnosed in his teens, and my nephew. And, that just didn't connect with me. Like, it took me probably 2 weeks of excessive thirst and frequent urination and kind of like fatigue and headaches, but it was waves, and it was just kind of this gradual onset that I more or less compared to being a frog boiled in a pot, not knowing when to jump out. You just feel tired. And
Yeah.
I ended up, getting sick after a race one weekend in November, and luckily I threw up the orange juice and Coca-Cola that I thought I was, I thought I was just like...
Low blood sugar.
I wasn't concerned about low blood. I was just like, I need to settle my stomach. So Coke has a great reputation among Ironman athletes as, like the acid.
I did not know that.
Yeah, flat Coke at mile 20 is like, there's one place in the world for perhaps industrial doses of sugar, and when somebody is suffering from that level of often hypoglycemia, that seems to rescue them. So that was just kind of like, the old wisdom that my mom was like, pop an Advil. It was like, pop a Coke when your stomach feels off, or whatever it was. It was just, it wasn't health advice. So again, I've come a long way.
Yeah.
But I ended up just struggling through that illness, and I still went to work. I even rode my bike to work the next day. I was probably self-medicating with exercise, and maybe saving my life in that sense.
Oh, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, because exercise amplifies the effect of insulin, and I was struggling to produce insulin, so perhaps that was helping me. I knew I felt much better on days where I went for a gradual 2 to 3 hour bike ride rather than like race for 20 minutes. That would always leave my head pounding. That has blood sugar raising effects and adrenaline and all those other factors coming in. But a long bike ride with, and I was kind of cheap and frugal at the time, so I would usually undereat on those rides, so I wasn't like paying for endurance gels or whatever the brand names are that are,
What about caffeine? Do you notice a difference with caffeine?
The world's happier with caffeine for me. I don't have a problem with caffeine.
Okay.
Some type 1s do get an adrenal type of response. I'm not exactly sure what to attribute that response to. I'm a habitual coffee drinker. It doesn't seem to affect me.
I was just wondering.
It's one of those nuances within the diabetes world that there's so many.
Because it affects me.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, it certainly has an effect, and I know within our type 1 grit group there are several who have an effect with that. I'm not sure what's going on with the differences between that, but I would suspect subtle things like food allergy, or even just like what your adrenal status is, possibly, or maybe just I'm so habituated to it that it doesn't seem to bother me. Maybe if I quit for a year and had a cup of coffee, it would really shoot me. Like had that experience too. Like you can come desensitized to something, whether it's insulin or whether it's caffeine.
Totally.
So
I think you told me originally that you were misdiagnosed at first.
Yeah. So I rode my bike into work on that Monday, and I was setting up the workout for the class I was coaching, and I was trying to adjust the projector because it was blurry. The only thing I took seriously as a symptom was the fact that my athletes corrected me and were like, no, it's fine. I was like, no, it's blurry. I pride myself. I have 20/10 vision. Like I can spot a baseball 100 yards away. I was kind of like, okay, what's going on here? And so I went into the doctor there and got the sad looks from the nurses. They tested my blood sugar, but didn't quite tell me what that meant. I didn't have a context for values. And they sent me home with some oral, type 2 diabetes drugs, and kind of just sent me home. Like my blood sugar, now that I remember, was in the 360s, which is, in my opinion, dangerously high. And I was truly a type 1 diabetic, so I didn't have insulin production going on. So I could have ended up in a coma very shortly thereafter. Only because I started, kind of looking into it, because I was like, okay, something's really odd, and I'm just the research type. I was also head of career biochem research, where that's always helpful to have.
Good thing.
Yeah. So being able to read through research and kind of
Yeah.
understand physiology helped there. So I ended up going to, and life was just chaos at that time. It was like, I was going through that, but my father's health had declined further. That long story of iatrogenic harm was my father. It was probably more than just the statins and the blood pressure pills and everything else. But my father was diagnosed with Parkinson's and then later on Lewy body dementia. And so it was in the midst of him really struggling and my mother really struggling with his diagnosis that I was diagnosed. Stress seems to kind of push you over the edge at times. And, I was diagnosed and I knew something was wrong with my diagnosis, but we had to deal with some family issues. And so I just drove 200 miles to northern Wisconsin with blurry vision and my brother in the passenger seat. And we stopped at, I think it was BW3s or something up in Stevens Point, and my instinct was to just order protein.
Wow.
And I was like, well, I know what, it's, I know what blood sugar comes from,
Yeah.
So I just decided to start there. And my blood sugar was still in the 300s that whole time. I don't want to know what would have happened if I...
Were you testing it?
Yeah, I was able to actually get a meter from a friend of mine.
Okay.
One of my athletes had a friend or had a partner with type 1. And she was like, she helped me identify my symptoms. She was the one who recognized that when my vision was blurry, and that my 3 bathroom trips during the coaching class were suspicious to her, and so she kind of saved me in that regard. So I started monitoring my blood sugar, which is key to management. I don't know why I wasn't just given free access to test as much as I could right away and figure it out, but I had to kind of stealthily find my own supplies. And then I worked that weekend and I came back, and after about 50 different calls to 50 different doctors, and I kept hounding on them, I got calls from like 3 doctors at the same time saying, okay, we got to see you. Because I was told if I were to try to get an appointment with an endocrinologist, it would be a 3-month wait.
Wow.
And apparently squeaky wheels get through a little faster. So I was like, look, I gotta get in. So luckily the situation was rectified within a week, but there was a point where I had, before that appointment, even gone into the emergency room, or not to urgent care, and said, I need insulin. I'm going to die without this. I have an appointment in 3 days, but I need insulin now. And it was in the middle of the Packer game.
Wow.
So the urgent care was empty. I was the only person there, and I still got rushed out in 5 minutes. And so I just stopped, and I just broke down in the hallway and was crying to the doctor saying, if I were your son, you would treat me. They wanted to go through their proper channels, and I understand the liability.
Right.
But I was dying, literally, and just broke down and was like, you gotta give me some insulin. I don't want to sit here with blood sugar in the 360s for another 3 days just because that's when I'll get a proper education class. And it wasn't going to be a proper education class now that I know it anyway. But it was finally started on insulin and taught how to train that, and all of a sudden, after they realized their mistake, I got a bunch of apologetic responses, and let's talk to patient services, and they tried to cover their butts.
Yeah.
But it was really me that saved myself, saved myself out of that situation, and it wasn't them.
Wow.
And so I do harbor a good amount of resentment for the whole system, because now I've since learned that my mother's type 2 diagnosis was also a misdiagnosis. She was one of those very old onset, a lot of cases, probably a gradual onset, but understanding, insulin dynamics now, she's more insulin sensitive than I am.
Yeah.
So why was she, she had a little bit of overweight like everybody does in their 50s now, but they just lumped her in with that type 2.
How much fat cells you have, it's how stuffed they are.
Yeah. So she,
I've got a lot of 105-pound diabetics.
Yeah,
type
and
1.
I know
type 2, I mean.
Yeah, I know a few of those too. Yeah, it's exactly that philosophy that's coming into play. And my mother most likely also had autoimmune, diabetes going on, and so now she's at least properly diagnosed, but not properly treated.
Yeah.
They're still using sliding scales and recommending 70-30 insulins to her just because she's in her 70s, because if you don't have that long to live, let's just run them high and stay away from that dangerous low and normal blood sugar range, and let diabetes do its harm over the 10 years that remain, or I don't know. I'm pretty bitter on that.
No, that's
when it's your mother, when it's your father.
Well, and your dad too. Did you ever try to talk to the doctors about Alzheimer's being type 3 diabetes?
Well, that's when I was working for a doctor as a nutritional therapist, and we were looking into, or nutritional counselor.
Yeah.
I was just working under his degree, but I had done extensive research at that time.
Did you feed him differently?
Oh yeah, we went full on ketogenic with him, and
Did you notice a difference?
Oh yeah, he went from we went on a.
I love this.
We went on a last family cruise to Alaska, and I was pushing him around in a wheelchair and carrying him upstairs, and that was. Let's see, I think it was around I have to figure out my timeline. It was about a year after that, I'll say, is when I had ended up moving back in with my parents and taking over the cooking chores in the house and helping my mother with her type 2 diabetes, but also going after the benefits neurologically of a ketogenic diet for my father. He never drank coffee in his life, and actually coffee seems to help Parkinson's, strangely, or is at least claimed to, but I just kind of used that. Just keeping him awake during the day would have been a nice improvement, because sleeping during the day and then kind of that you're just kind of up all night then with Lewy body and kind of having hallucinations, and it's an awful situation. So started him on coffee in the morning with me as I would drive an hour and 45 minutes to work, working as a counselor, and I'd have lunch prepped, and then I'd come back and cook dinner. And,
so you learned kind of how to run a restaurant efficiently by
I learned
your
a lot
parents.
just by, well, I took over, she cooked me a lot of meals, and I had to return the favor. So, my dad went on your question of did we see progress? I have pictures of him probably about 18 months after that trip, riding his bicycle.
Wow.
So, it didn't cure Lewy body.
Right.
My father's since passed, but it definitely improved the standard of living that he was experiencing, as well as my mother's, because he was couch bound and had needed a lift chair, but he could walk a bit. It was work for him to go a quarter mile, a lot of work, and it would wipe him out for the day. But he was able to start making progress, but also it wasn't like the exercise that caused him to lose 40 pounds.
Right.
It was the nutritional shift.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so my mom was able to help him get up and out of the chair and get into bed and dressed and all those things. We had, he was seeing doctors like monthly for every other condition. He had great insurance, which was good and bad.
Yeah.
And he improved his cardiovascular risk category from. Now, I'm not an expert in that grading system, but from 4 to 3, where it improved.
Yeah.
You might have it backwards from 3 to 4. But in the meantime, he wasn't exercising. He was eating, I was doing the bulletproof coffee with MCT oil in the morning, and I was feeding him lots of salmon at night, and salads with greens, and, proteins, and, playing around and seeing what I could get to work. And it wasn't like the magical awakenings and that Robin Williams movie, but he was, he definitely improved and stabilized until, my mother was able to keep him out of assisted living for all but 3 months of his life.
Good.
So it helped.
Are you an Amazon Prime member?
Yes.
Did you see Under Your Skin?
Yes. Is that the
about
Gem
Lyme?
6? Yeah.
Lyme disease, and how
Yeah.
they believe that like Parkinson's, MS, Alzheimer's all lead back to a undiagnosed Lyme's disease.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, and my father
Because that
definitely
does
had diagnosed
take your
Lyme's disease even.
Immune system away.
Oh yeah.
So is it that's what takes your immune system away, which causes
Yeah.
X, Y, or Z?
This is
I
a
don't
5-hour
know.
conversation.
I know.
Yeah, but yeah, my father had been diagnosed
Lyme?
with not chronic Lyme, because that's not a thing.
Oh, yeah.
But he did have the acute form and was treated. He also later on found out that he was so burdened with heavy metals from just occupational exposure.
Yeah.
He was a salesman and sold nuts, bolts, fasteners, and welded and rebuilt houses and all kinds of stuff. So he had everything from lead to. So yeah, I ended up way deep into the alternative health world. But as like a researcher, I'm very pragmatic, and what I'm kind of science-minded in that sense, and I'm reading through these, like finding flaws in studies, and I'm like, wait, that doesn't make sense. And just
who
find,
funded the study?
Yeah, it's amazing that, and my years in research kind of alerted me to the fact that research isn't always research, and there's a lot of the work that I did for the university sure felt like product development for private corporations off campus, and because it was, and and I was just like, well, I'm gonna start questioning everything, and just got to start there, and start with base principles. And, found that, eventually it just kind of convergently found Dr. Bernstein, not even as the first person that I found. It was just like, I converged upon the solution that he had found. And, not that, he's a way smarter guy than me, but I was like, all right, this guy makes sense. And it totally aligns with what my real experience is, not what I'm told my experience to be. And
did you ever know what your A1C was at the highest?
Yeah, 11.2 at diagnosis. So that was an average blood sugar in the 300s.
Wow.
And I played at the going from an endurance athlete, and I was probably eating about a kilogram of carbs a day. And I'm training 4 to 5 hours on average a day, just with coaching and then my own training. So I can eat, but it was a lot of starch. It wasn't helping the situation. So then when I was kind of dosing insulin, I was so insulin sensitive because I had probably been living a long time without it, that I needed juvenile diabetes pens, and I couldn't even find those. It was like, can I find an insulin syringe or a pen with a half unit increment? Because I needed to eat 40 grams of carbohydrates every time I had injected 1 unit of insulin, which is nuts for somebody that's 200 pounds. And I was like, okay, this is, just the basic question of, can I dilute insulin? And I'm a biochemist who does protein dilutions and buffers and all that stuff, and I'm like, I can't find anybody to help me with this. People act like I'm crazy, but like I couldn't find a small enough syringe for myself.
Well, let's talk about ketoacidosis. How do you feel about that with type 1s?
It's scary. The first thing that I was told about it is, I was probably close to it on the verge. I can look at my early blood values, and I was creeping that way, but perhaps my endurance metabolism helped me kind of burn through. And if you're going to run for 4 hours, you're probably burning, a flexible fuel source. So I had maybe been able to be a little keto adapted just through training. That's theory. But I was able to stay away from it. But that was the boogeyman when I was diagnosed. Is like, oh my God, if I go more than 3 hours without insulin, when I switched to an insulin pump so that I could fine tune and do a 20th of a unit at a time to fine tune my blood sugars and not be locked into eating 40 grams of carbs at a time at a meal. That's when I was able to kind of teeter down, and I started maybe a couple of months at 100 and maybe 120 grams of carbs, not knowing whether it was safe for a low carb or for an athlete or a type 1 diabetic to eat low carb, especially with what I was trying to do for a career at the time.
How many carbs do you think you get a day?
Somewhere between 0 and 40.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you ever need to, no?
I mean, I correct my blood sugar when it's low, and I eat vegetables.
How do you, vegetables?
Yeah. I'll correct my blood sugar.
Because I still get those type 1s that still want those Smarties.
Well, Smarties are glucose, so at least in this country. So each Smartie is 0.4 grams of glucose.
Okay.
The Dex 4, whatever brand, I like my specific flavor, the Glucolift tabs that are 4 grams. And 4 grams raises my blood sugar 15 milligrams per deciliter.
You know exactly.
And so I always carry, I got a couple of tablets in this little case. And, that's my safety net.
Do you still wake up in the night?
Oh yeah. I check. I mean,
Do you have an alert?
No, I just wake up.
Yeah.
I'm rather in tune with my body now. I used the CGM extensively when I was first diagnosed. That's just a mandatory tool, I feel. It was a little pricey for my use, but I had to figure out something. So I would get a trace of my blood sugar response to a meal and troubleshoot from there. And it was nice to have the alerts, because initially with the dynamics of how my metabolism was, I was a carb burner. I have these metabolic tests where you run on the treadmill, you have the gas mask on, and you almost suffocate. And I was burning sugar, in the warm up. I was that respiratory quotient was 1.0. I was just locked into sugar. I was really good endurance sugar burner with an iron stomach, so I could just take my gel every 20 minutes and go on for days almost. But maybe at the 12-hour point, your stomach gets a little achy, but I think anybody's would.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went from that really high carb consumption, and there was some kind of, I don't know if I call it grayness in my life, as I was kind of like, my metabolism had to switch over entirely. Ironically, I'd been trying to train specifically at this zone to try to improve my fat metabolism for all this endurance exercise. So then I was really shocked when a nutritional shift really got my body into fat burning, and endurance training is ideal for that situation where you're a fat adapted athlete. You can never bonk again. I've since done, even with diabetes, I've done 2 Ironman since with diabetes, and just like my normal diet of how I eat now. My about 40 grams of carbs, and I maybe corrected with 5 grams during. And I think one race I ate a couple of almond butter packets, and the other I just kind of went with what I needed, and it wasn't much. I had my omelet for breakfast, and then I didn't eat again till the evening when I was done.
I love this.
Yeah, and that was me being a little bit. I wanted to test myself. Not just like, I've always kind of been somebody who kind of goes towards challenges instead of away. But I really wanted to know if this was, if you want to know if the car works, you want to drive it fast, I guess.
Yeah.
You don't really test drive a car in the parking lot. You take it on the road and you drive it. So I wanted to see, well, if this really is as good as what it's sounding to be, I should be able to do things still and be an athlete. And if I can be an athlete successfully and continue to still do Ironman and marathons and stuff like that with as normal blood sugar as possible, and in my case, I didn't end up with normal blood sugar.
Awesome.
It was just amazing to me that I could, and I was like, okay, now I guess going to work isn't such a big challenge, because initially I wasn't. It was like, okay, I got to wake up an hour early before work, get my meal done, and then I'm afraid to drive if my numbers are here or there, and things were shifting so fast because my body would just burn through sugar. And now my body uses glucose or glycogen probably about a quarter of the rate that it used to, relying primarily on fatty acids in the muscles, and that powers my day and leaves my blood sugar for the critical functions in my brain, my eyes, my red blood cells where it's needed. But
do you know what your A1C is now?
The last check it was 5.1.
Awesome.
But since so within 6 months, even on that reduced carbohydrate, I got it to 5.7, but with a pretty good amount of variability and a lot of white knuckle steering of that roller coaster.
Yeah.
But since I've kind of trusted that I could get into the low carb, and even ketogenic side of things, that's where I've been 4.8 to 5.3 for the past 5 years.
Awesome.
And I still get excursions and things still go wrong, and you still get, you go out to a restaurant, you still end up with some cornstarch on some wings, or the things that are really hard to find. But by and large, I'm in control of this.
That's awesome. Well, let's actually see what you eat. How about that?
Oh yeah, it's horrible. I'm deprived.